All right, continuing with this user details component, take a look at the implementation of ng onInit method. Here we are subscribing to the params property of this route, which is an observable. And at this point, we look at the ID parameter passed to this page. If ID is 0, we navigate the user to the not found page. Now, this is a simplified example. In a real-world application, instead of comparing the ID with 0, perhaps we would use a service like user service to get a user with the given ID from the server. And then if we can't find that user, we will redirect the user to the not found page. So let's not worry about that complexity. What matters here is that you need to learn how to work with this params property. Or in other words, you need to learn how to work with the activated route class in your tests. So back to our spec file, I'm going to copy this last test, duplicate it, and change the test name to it should navigate the user to the not found page when an invalid user ID is passed. So similar to the last test, we want to get a reference to the router. We want to put a spy on this router to assert that the navigate method has been called. However, we're not going to call this component.save. Instead, we want to pass a parameter to this component. So first, we need to get a reference to the activated route object passed to our component. So let route be testbed.get activated route. Now here, if I type dot, we don't get IntelliSense because the type of the object returned from the get method is any. So we need to add the type explicitly here. And as you saw earlier, the type of this object is activated route stub. Because earlier, when configuring our testing module, we told Angular to replace activated route with activated route stub. Okay? Now, back to our test. So this class has a property called params, which is an observable. Now here's the interesting part. All the methods you see here are used to read values from this observable. In other words, we do not have any methods to push a new value to this observable. So in this lecture, I'm going to show you a technique to push a value into an observable and use that as a parameter passed to a component. So comment this out. Let's go back to the implementation of our stub. Okay, here it is. So here I'm going to define a private field, private, call it subject, and initialize it to a new instance of the subject class. Subject is a class defined in RxJS. It derives from observable. So it is an observable. It has all the capabilities that we have in observables. However, it has an additional feature. It has a method that we can call to push a new value into this observable. So first, let's import this class on the top. So here we add subject. Okay, so here's our field. Now I'm going to define a method called push, which takes a value. And then here we call this .subject.next. That's the method I was telling you about. So with this next method, we can push a value into this observable. So I'm going to pass this value here. Now the final step. So let's go back to our component. Look, here we're using the params property of this activated route. So we're not using this subject. Now what we need to do is to expose this subject as a property called params, which is an observable. So back to our stub. Instead of declaring this params as a public field, I'm going to declare it as a public property with a getter. So get params. It's a public property, so it looks like a method, but it's actually a property. Now here in the getter, we return this .subject.asObservable. So we expose this subject as an observable to the outside world. So with this, our component can use this params property like an observable. So back here, we don't need this line anymore. All right, so here's our stub. Now back to our test. So at this point, we have an access to this activated route stub. So we're going to call route.push. Now here we need to pass an object that has a property called ID, and the value is 0. So with this, we push a new value into our observable. And then back in our component, because here we have a subscription to this observable, this code will be executed. At this point, because the ID is 0, we should navigate the user to the not found page. So back to our test. Here's our assertion. Let's save it and look at the result in the terminal. Okay, our test failed, and I'm really happy that this happened. Look at the error. Expected spy navigate to have been called with users, but actual calls were not found. So in our test, because we copied this test from the last one, I forgot to change this users here to not found. So we're asserting that we should take the user to the users page, but actually we're taking them to the not found page. So with this, we can ensure that we're testing the right thing. So if I go here and change this to not found and save, now all our tests are passing. Beautiful. Next, we're going to look at testing components that use a router outlet.